Have you ever kept a secret to help someone you love without them knowing? For the past 3 years, I've been waking up every single morning 45 minutes earlier than my wife just to move her car keys. She thinks she's simply gotten better at remembering where she puts things. The truth is, I've been doing it for her all along. It started when we first moved in together. My wife, being a bit scatterbrained in the mornings, would panic if she couldn't find her keys. It would set her off into full-on stress mode, tearing the house apart, checking her purse over and over, even searching the fridge. I'll never forget the time they were in her winter coat pocket in the middle of July. One night, she cried and said she thought she was losing her mind. She even researched early onset memory problems online. She was only 29. That's when I decided to step in and help. So, every morning for the past 3 years, I've been quietly getting up before her at 5:45, going downstairs and finding her keys. Whether they're on the kitchen counter, in her coat pocket, or even buried under her purse, I always make sure to put them right where they belong on the hook by the front door. When she comes downstairs at 6:45, she grabs them without thinking, never panicking, never stressing. 6 months in, she mentioned at dinner, "I haven't lost my keys in forever. I think I'm getting better at remembering where I put things." I just smiled and said, "That's great, babe. I'm really proud of you." A year later, at Sunday dinner with her mom, she said, "I don't know what changed, but I've been so much more organized. Haven't lost my keys once this entire year." Her mom smiled and said, "See, you just needed to develop better habits. You're becoming a real adult." I sat there, silent, eating my mashed potatoes. 2 years later, she started telling her friends. I'd overhear her on FaceTime saying, "I swear, something just clicked. I used to lose everything. Now I always know exactly where my keys are." She even told her sister last week, "It's been 3 years, and I haven't lost my keys once. I finally got my life together." Her sister asked, "What's your secret?" She laughed and said, "Honestly, I think I just grew up, became more responsible." I was standing in the kitchen doorway, sipping my morning coffee, listening to it all, just smiling to myself. This morning, like every other morning, my alarm went off at 5:45. I quietly slipped out of bed, went downstairs, and found her keys on the dining room table next to an empty wine glass. I picked them up and hung them on the hook by the door. At 6:45, I heard her footsteps coming down. She kissed me on the cheek, grabbed her keys, looked at them for a second, smiled to herself, and whispered, "Look at me being all responsible." She walked out the door, completely stress-free and proud of herself. She'll never know I've been doing this for her every single morning for the past 3 years. And honestly, that's exactly how I want it to be. The truth is, it isn't just about the keys anymore. It has become a ritual, a silent vow I renew every single day before the sun even touches the windows of our suburban home. In those first few months of our marriage, the key panic wasn't just a minor inconvenience. It was a barometer for her entire day. If she couldn't find them within 3 minutes, her breathing would get shallow. By 5 minutes, she'd be near tears, convinced that her brain was fundamentally broken. She'd go to work already defeated, carrying that weight of perceived inadequacy into her meetings and her friendships. Seeing that look in her eyes, that genuine fear that she was failing at being a functional human being was more than I could stand. So I became a ghost in my own house. I've learned the geography of her chaos better than I know my own habits. I know that if she had a long day at the clinic, the keys are likely still in the lock of the front door. If she was carrying groceries, they're probably nestled between the fruit bowl and a stack of mail on the kitchen island. If she was tired and headed straight for a shower, I'll find them on the bathroom vanity, dangerously close to the sink. There's a specific quietness to 5:45 a.m. The house is still cool, the air smelling faintly of the lavender detergent she likes, and the stale remnants of last night's dinner. I move through the rooms in my socks, avoiding the creaky floorboard near the stairs. It's a scavenger hunt with the highest stakes. Sometimes, it's a genuine challenge. Last Tuesday, she had hidden them in the pocket of a bathrobe she hadn't worn in weeks. I spent 20 minutes looking, my heart racing as 6 a.m. approached. When I finally felt the cold metal against my palm, I felt a rush of adrenaline that no cup of coffee could ever provide. I hooked them onto the wooden peg by the door with a practiced, silent click. The psychological shift in her has been nothing short of miraculous. It wasn't just that she stopped losing her keys, she stopped losing her confidence. Because she fixed her organization, she felt capable of tackling other things. She asked for a promotion. She started a hobby group. She carries herself with a certain lightness now, a grace that was missing when we first met. She thinks she did it all on her own, and in a way, she did. I just removed the one stumbling block that kept her from seeing her own potential. Last month, we had a small scare. I had a flu that knocked me sideways. I was shivering, delirious with a high fever, and I slept right through the 5:45 alarm. I woke up at 7:10 to the sound of her moving around downstairs. My heart stopped. I panicked, thinking, asterisk, this is it. The streak is broken. The illusion is gone. Asterisk. I stumbled out of bed, my head spinning, and crept to the top of the stairs. I watched her through the banister. She was humming a song, pouring her coffee. It was empty. I held my breath. I saw her pause. Her hand stayed in midair for a second. This was the moment where, 3 years ago, the screaming and the crying would have started. Instead, she just tilted her head. She didn't panic. She didn't even sigh. She walked calmly back to the kitchen, looked under her tote bag, found the keys sitting right where she'd dropped them next to her laptop, and smiled. "Nice try, brain," she murmured to herself. She walked over, hung them on the hook, finished her coffee, and then took them back off the hook to leave for work. I crawled back into bed, sweating from the fever but smiling. She didn't need me to move them that morning because I had already moved them 1,000 times before. I had built a bridge of habit in her mind that was finally strong enough to hold her up, even when I wasn't there to steady it. I still get up at 5:45 though. I don't need to. She's actually much better at it now, genuinely. But I still do it. If they aren't on the hook, I put them there. It's my way of saying I love you before she's even awake to hear it. It's a secret I'll take to my grave because her pride in her own growth is worth more to me than the credit for a few minutes of lost sleep. Last month, however, the secret almost came unraveled. It was one of those rainy, gray Tuesdays where the house feels like it's holding its breath. I had been particularly deep in sleep when the alarm went off, and I was moving a bit slower than usual. I found her keys in the laundry room. She'd left them in the pocket of her scrubs, and I was just about to place them on the hook when I heard the floorboard creak upstairs. I froze. My heart was thumping so hard I thought she'd hear it through the ceiling. I pressed my back against the wall in the entryway, the cold metal of the keychain biting into my palm. I heard her footsteps move toward the bathroom, then the sound of the shower starting. I took a breath and placed the keys on the hook with the surgical precision of a bomb technician. That night, she was unusually quiet at dinner. She kept looking at me, her head tilted slightly, that doctor look she gets when she's diagnosing a patient. "Everything okay, babe?" I asked, trying to sound casual as I pushed some peas around my plate. "It's weird," she said, resting her chin on her hand. "I had a dream last night, or maybe it was this morning. I dreamed I heard footsteps at 5:45, and then I dreamed I saw a shadow in the hallway. I felt a cold bead of sweat roll down my neck, probably just the house settling. Or maybe the cat next door was making a racket again." She narrowed her eyes, but then Then she laughed. You're probably right. I'm just so hyper-aware of my routine now. It's like I'm protective of this new me. I don't want to go back to being that girl who cried because she couldn't find her way out the door. That comment hit me harder than I expected. It made me realize that my little white lie had grown into something much bigger than a morning chore. If I told her now, I wouldn't just be saying, hey, I move your keys. I'd be saying, that growth you're so proud of, that new you, it's partially an illusion. I realized then that I can never tell her. Not because I'm afraid of the truth, but because the truth would be an act of cruelty. Some people say a marriage should have 0 secrets, but I disagree. I think a marriage is built on 1,000 tiny, invisible supports. This just happens to be mine. There was a moment last week when her sister Elena stayed over. Elena is the opposite of my wife, organized to a fault, borderline clinical about it. At breakfast, she watched my wife walk straight to the hook, grab her keys, and head out with a cheery, love you guys. Elena looked at me, her eyes sharp. She really has changed, hasn't she? I remember when she was a disaster. I used to bet Mom how many minutes late she'd be to Christmas dinner. She's worked hard, I said, focusing on my coffee. It's almost too perfect, Elena mused, tapping her chin. She's never been this consistent in her entire life. It's like she's possessed by a ghost of efficiency. I just shrugged. Maybe she just found the right motivation, and she has. Her motivation is the feeling of being in control. Every time she grabs those keys, she feels like she's winning. She feels like she's conquered a weakness that used to define her. Sometimes, when I'm lying in bed after the 5:45 alarm, watching the light slowly creep under the curtains, I think about the future. I think about when we're 70, and our kids are grown, and maybe we're living in a smaller house. I imagine myself, old and gray, still shuffling down the hallway in my slippers to find her keys. Maybe by then, she'll actually be losing her memory for real. And if that day comes, I'll be glad I've had 40 years of practice. I'll be glad that I know exactly where she hides things when she's tired, or stressed, or overwhelmed. Being a partner isn't always about the grand gestures. It's not always about the public declarations of love or the expensive gifts. Most of the time, it's about the 5:45 a.m.s. It's about the quiet, thankless tasks that make the other person's world a little bit softer, a little bit kinder. She'll never know that I'm the reason she thinks she's grown up. She'll never know that I've seen her at her most disorganized and loved her enough to hide it from her. And as I hear her car pull out of the driveway, the engine humming a steady rhythm as she heads off to start another successful, stress-free day, I know I'd do it for another 30 years without a second thought. I climbed back into bed, the sheets still warm from her side, and closed my eyes for 20 more minutes of sleep. The secret was safe. She was happy. And in the end, that's the only credit I ever needed. What I didn't realize at first was that once you start looking after someone's peace of mind, you start noticing all the other tiny fractures where stress leaks in. It's like a dam. Once you plug the main hole, the keys, you start seeing the little drips everywhere else. About a year ago, I noticed she started getting frustrated with her phone charger. She'd wake up and her phone would be at 14% because the cable had slipped behind the nightstand or she'd simply forgotten to plug it in. That little low battery chime at 7 a.m. was enough to ruin her mood before she'd even had her coffee. So, I added it to the 5:45 ritual. Now, after I've moved the keys to the hook, I loop back upstairs. I check her phone. If it's not charging, I plug it in. If it's already full, I tuck the cord neatly so she doesn't trip on it. It's such a small thing, but watching her look at a 100% battery icon while she brushes her teeth gives her this tiny boost of confidence. She'll say, I'm finally getting into the habit of plugging this thing in, and I just nod and tell her how great it is that she's staying on top of things. But the biggest test of our secret came last winter. We had a massive snowstorm, the kind that buries the driveway and shuts down the city. I was out there at 5 a.m. shoveling so she could get to the hospital. She's a nurse, so snow days don't exist for her. I was exhausted, freezing, and my back was screaming. When I finally came back inside, I saw her standing by the front door in her coat, staring at the key hook. My heart skipped. For a second, I thought I'd forgotten. I thought I'd finally slipped up. Everything okay? I asked, shaking the snow off my boots. She turned to me, and her eyes were misty. I was just looking at these keys, Mark. Do you remember how I used to be? How I'd be screaming and crying right now because I couldn't find them? I'd be late for my shift, and I'd feel like a failure. She walked over and touched the keys hanging perfectly on the hook. I feel like a different person. I feel like I finally have a handle on my life. I don't think I could have become this version of myself if I hadn't found this bit of stability. In that moment, I realized the secret wasn't just about avoiding a morning argument. It was about providing a foundation. By taking away her biggest failure, her forgetfulness, I had given her the room to build 1,000 other successes. She wasn't just responsible now. She was confident. She was brave. She was a leader at work because she didn't start her day feeling like a mess. Sometimes I wonder if I'm lying to her. Technically, I am. I'd be telling her that her success is a prop, a stage managed by her husband. And why would I do that? To feel superior? To get a thank you? I don't need the thank you. I get my reward every morning when I hear the front door close, and I know she's heading out into the world feeling like she can handle anything it throws at her. A few nights ago, we were lying in bed, just talking in the dark. She reached over and squeezed my hand. You're so patient with me, Mark, she whispered. I know I can be a lot sometimes. I know I'm lucky to have someone who stays so calm when I'm vibrating with stress. You do the hard work, babe, I said, and I meant it. I'm just here to make sure the door stays open. She fell asleep shortly after, her breathing deep and even. I stayed awake for a while, looking at the clock. 5:45 was only a few hours away. I felt a weird sense of pride. Most people show their love through words or flowers or expensive dinners. I show mine in the quiet shuffle of socks on hardwood, the silver jingle of a keychain, and the soft click of a wooden hook. It's the most important work I've ever done. I know that one day, the routine might change. We might move, or our lives might shift in ways we can't predict. But as long as she needs to feel like she's got it all together, I'll be there in the dark, 45 minutes before the world wakes up, making sure she's right. What I never expected was that my secret ritual would eventually lead me to discover one of hers. About 6 months ago, I was doing my usual rounds. I'd moved the keys, plugged in her phone, and was about to head back upstairs when I noticed her work bag sitting by the door. It was unzipped, and a small, leather-bound notebook had tumbled out. I picked it up to tuck it back in, but a loose, sticky note fell out from between the pages. On it, in her neat, looping handwriting, were the words, asterisk, 5:52 a.m. Keys moved. 5:58 a.m. Phone plugged in. Coffee started, asterisk. My heart stopped. I stood there in the dim light of the kitchen, the sticky note trembling in my hand. She had known for God knows how much longer than I'd been tracking her habits. I felt a sudden, sharp sting of embarrassment. Had I been playing the fool? Had she been humoring me this entire time, laughing behind my back at my little early morning scavenger hunts? I didn't say a word. I put the note back, zipped the bag, and went to bed. I didn't sleep for the rest of the hour. The next few days were agonizing. I watched her at breakfast, looking for a smirk, a wink, some sign of the gotcha moment, but she was exactly the same. She'd grab her keys, give me that same proud little smile, and head out the door. Finally, on Saturday morning, I couldn't couldn't take the silence anymore. We were sitting on the porch with our coffee, the neighborhood quiet and still. Babe, I said, staring at my mug. I saw the notebook. In your bag. She went very still. She didn't look at me, but I saw her grip her cup a little tighter. The part where you've been timing me, I said. The keys. The phone. You've known. She let out a long, shaky breath and finally turned to face me. Her eyes weren't mocking. They were swimming with tears. I woke up early about a year ago. I had a nightmare and wanted to get some water. I saw you downstairs, in the dark, looking under the sofa cushions for my keys. You looked so tired, Mark. You looked like you were on a mission. Why didn't you stop me? I asked, my voice cracking. Why did you let me keep up the act? Because at first I was embarrassed, she admitted, wiping a tear away. I realized how much of a burden my stress had become to you. But then, as the weeks went by, I realized it wasn't a burden to you. It was a gift. You weren't doing it because you had to. You were doing it because you wanted me to feel like I was winning. She reached over and took my hand. I started writing it down because I wanted to remember every single day that someone loved me enough to do the invisible stuff. Every time I told my mom or my sister how organized I wasn't lying to them. I was bragging about you, in a way only I understood. I was celebrating the fact that I had a partner who built a world where I could be the best version of myself. I sat there, stunned. I thought I was the one protecting her, but she had been protecting the secret to protect times me asterisk. She knew that if she confessed, the magic of the gesture would be gone. She had let me keep my secret because she knew how much I loved being her silent guardian. So, I said, a small smile finally breaking through. You're still scatterbrained? She laughed, a real, genuine sound that echoed in the morning air. Oh, I'm a disaster, Mark. I still lose my hair ties every 10 minutes and I have no idea where my sunglasses are right now. But I don't panic anymore, because I know that even if I lose everything else, I'll never lose you. That was the day the secret changed. I still get up at 5:45 a.m. I still move the keys to the hook and I still plug in her phone. But now, occasionally, I find a little note tucked under the keys. Sometimes it says, thank you. Sometimes it's a drawing of a heart. And sometimes it's just a reminder. Check the fridge. I think I left them by the milk. We still don't tell anyone else. Her sister still thinks she's a miracle of modern organization, and her mom still gives her credit for growing up. We just share a look across the dinner table, a private, silent understanding. I used to think a marriage was about the things you do together. Now I know it's also about the things you do for each other in the dark, when no one is watching, and the grace you show when you finally step into the light.